We all know the story of Job, right? Or at least we think we do. It's this classic story of suffering and faith. But what if we've been missing some of the most important lessons hiding in plain sight? Well, in this explainer, we're diving into the really unique perspective of Daniel Lamptey. He uncovers these profound insights about communication, forgiveness, and what healing really looks like, all tucked away in this ancient story.
Okay, let's just jump right in with this quote from Daniel Lamptey because it cuts right to the heart of the whole thing. He points out that Job's friends weren't bad guys, they were sincere, but their sincerity was built on a huge misunderstanding. And this sets up the central problem, the dangerous gap between just speculating about God versus actually knowing Him.
So here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at the big misunderstanding Job's friends had. Then we'll get into God's kind of surprising way of communicating. After that, we'll uncover the real key to Job's restoration. Then we'll ask what healing actually looks like. And finally, we'll see how this whole disaster was really about growth for everyone.
All right, first up, when God finally shows up at the end of the story, He's not happy with Job's friends. But why? It wasn't because they were trying to be mean. Daniel Lamptey makes it really clear that God's anger was because they spoke incorrectly about Him. They had good intentions, but they just got it all wrong. And Daniel Lamptey has this fantastic, simple analogy to make this crystal clear. Imagine you're on a phone call, and for whatever reason, your voice sounds different. Two different people notice it, but their reactions are worlds apart.
So you've got person number one, the speculator. They hear your voice, hang up, and just start making stuff up. Oh, they must be sick, or they must be angry. Then you have person number two, the asker. They just ask, hey, your voice sounds different. Is everything okay? Now, whose report is going to be the right one? The asker's, obviously. Lamptey says Job's friends were speculators. They saw his suffering and just drew a bunch of wrong conclusions, and in doing so, they completely misrepresented God.
Okay, so that's the mistake they made. Now, things get even more interesting when we look at how God decided to handle it. His method was, well, it wasn't what you'd expect. He didn't just call a group meeting.
And this is where you might scratch your head a little bit. God's angry with all three friends, right? But He only speaks to one of them, Eliphaz. Why? What's going on there? This is where Lamptey introduces a cool idea he calls God's mathematics.
So God's mathematics, according to Lamptey, is this idea that God doesn't need to micromanage and talk to every single person. Instead, He finds one person with a humble heart, someone with a bit of influence, in this case Eliphaz, and He trusts that person to get the message to the rest of the group. Even though Eliphaz had messed up, God still saw his leadership potential. You can see the whole process laid out right here. First, God identifies that one receptive person. Then, He speaks directly to them. And finally, that person is empowered to bring everyone else up to speed. It's actually a really strategic, really efficient way to get everyone on the same page.
All right, now we get to what might be the biggest, most profound twist in this entire story. So the friends finally get it. They understand they were totally wrong. You'd think, okay, great, now Job gets healed, right? Nope. Not so fast. God put a very specific and very challenging condition in place.
I mean, just think about this for a second. After all the pain, after being proven right, Job's own healing gets put on hold. It was made conditional, and it all hinged on an action he had to take towards the very guys who were kicking him when he was down. The steps were super clear. The friends had to humble themselves, go to Job, and bring a sacrifice. But here's the kicker, the absolute key to the whole thing. Job had to pray for them. His physical healing was literally tied to his willingness to intercede on behalf of his accusers. It's just an incredible lesson. Job's healing was never just about him. It was completely wrapped up in his capacity to forgive.
And this brings us to another huge point that Daniel Lamptey makes about healing. We tend to read the end of the book and imagine it like, poof, Job is all better. Like it was magic. But that's probably not how it went down at all.
So let's be real for a second. The moment Job finished saying amen on his prayer for his friends, did his painful sores just vanish into thin air? Lamptey suggests we need to think about healing as a process, not just a single magical event.
This timeline here gives us a much more realistic picture. You see, before, nothing was working. But after Job obeyed and forgave his friends, that's when the healing process began. The sores would have started to respond to treatment. It was gradual. Day by day, he got better, until finally his skin was totally restored. The Bible often gives us the short version, but that gradual process, that's where you learn patience. That's where you build appreciation. And that's what makes the final healing so much more meaningful.
Okay, so for our last point, let's pull the camera back a bit. We call it the Book of Job, but Daniel Lamte's teaching really shows us this whole ordeal wasn't just about Job. No way. This was a deep, life-changing experience for every single person involved.
Yeah, just look at this table. It sums it all up. Job starts out righteous but suffering, and he comes out of it with this profound understanding of humility and the power of forgiveness. And his friends? They start out so arrogant, so sure they know everything, and they end up humbled, with a much more mature and real relationship with God. Everybody leveled up.
So when you look at it that way, the whole catastrophe wasn't just about testing one guy's faith. It was a divine process, designed to elevate the entire group to a higher level, to forge a stronger bond between them, and to bring every single one of them into a closer, more authentic walk with God.
And that leaves us with a really powerful thought to chew on in our own lives. What if the challenges we face aren't just for us? What if, as Daniel Lamte suggests through this new look at Job, our trials are actually designed to be a catalyst for growth, understanding, and healing for everyone we're connected to?